Hi, everybody. This is Renelle again. I'm here with Kurt Perhach. He's going to explain to us how he got himself involved in this crazy mystery, this Lindbergh kidnapping story that we're also involved in. It's become a hobby for a lot of people, but for Kurt, it's very important. He's the leader of a crusade that I spoke of in a previous video the other night, in which we're asking everybody to sign up, sign on to the effort for saliva forensic DNA testing of the envelopes that are in the safe in a place called West Trenton, New Jersey, in the State Police Archive. And we all hope they're still sitting in that safe because evidently the archive isn't open lately. So Kurt is going to tell us something about himself and the crusade that I want all of you to be involved in. Go ahead, Kurt. This is the first time we're meeting. We've never met before. Go ahead.
Thank you, Renelle. Really appreciate it. So how I became interested in this case, I was 13 years old. I'm born and raised in central New Jersey, grew up about 35 minutes from Highfields, and I was an avid reader. I read Kidnap by George Waller when I was 13 years old, and that sort of sparked the next 34 years of interest into this case. I had lots of peaks and valleys of significant interest and then minimal interest for periods of time. But as a teenager with a really curious mind, I was fascinated by the use of a wood expert in a criminal case for the first time in U.S. history. I was fascinated by the theory of the case. It didn't really make sense to me that this house in the middle of nowhere with no lights, a dog that barks at everything, somebody could park their car there and then know on a Tuesday night when it was slightly rainy, a new moon was 7, 8 days before, very little visibility, the one window in this big house under construction, where to go. I became very curious, and that actually motivated me to want to become an attorney in the future. So it planted the seed in my brain of sort of mystery detective and how I might help do good in the future. And so fast forward many years later, I studied history at the College of William and Mary, where I was a competitive chess player, and I grew up a competitive chess player in New Jersey, so competed in the Manhattan Chess Club and some other very competitive venues in the New York City area. And I was the president of the William and Mary Chess Club. I taught people in Virginia Peninsula Regional Jail for about 2.5 years how to play the game of chess. Because I wanted to see if the game of chess could improve people's lives who have made mistakes. Evaluating patience, logic, cause and effect, critical thinking skills. Fell in love with teaching, and then I joined Teach for America and started teaching in Newark in a windowless school called Dr. E. Alma Flagg School on the border of East Orange.
Wow.
3 times in my first 2 years, in my 2 years of teaching there, my car got broken into and all of my CDs got stolen from me. And as a kid, I was curious who would want to listen to Bob Dylan and Led Zeppelin in Newark, but I lost all my CDs a couple times. 9/11 was the second day of my second year teaching, and that catapulted me to drive down to the largest military base in New Jersey, Fort Dix, yep, exactly, and enlist in the Army. Eventually, I became a tank officer, and then I graduated from law school. After I stopped teaching, I attended law school full time for the next 3 years. And went active duty as a paratrooper stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, jumping out of airplanes, and found that I was in a unit that was going to deploy to Iraq. We actually deployed on my 30th birthday in January of 2008. And that particular year, I spent most of 2008 in Iraq. Fascinating year to be over there with the presidential election going on.
Right.
And I read a lot of books that year. So I rekindled my interest in the Lindbergh case. I think I probably had only read a handful of books at that point. I definitely had read Lloyd Gardner's and a couple of the other ones before. But in 2008, I probably read about 30 of the books. I bought even Jaffsey's book, and I have that one.
Wow.
Yeah, and so then from Iraq, I started emailing the archivist, Mark Falzini, and we entered into a bit of a pen pal friendship relationship. And he couldn't believe that somebody overseas in Iraq with an 8 hour time difference kept emailing him questions every single day about what about this? What about this? What about this? Um, so later, when I came back home from my deployment, I met Mark several times in the museum. He took me with his group to Conti's. We had pizza, got to spend time with Lloyd Gardner and his crew talking about different theories and why the thumb guard was found when it was found, and all of these different fascinating things. And I've been friends now with Mark since that time period when I started emailing him in 2008. I probably have visited the police museum and looked at the material probably no more than 40 times, but somewhere around closer to 30, I would think. I was there the day that Jim Davidson and Mark were autographing their books, and I've taken my children there several times now. Um, During COVID, I became particularly intrigued by your quest from many years ago of how come nobody's ever made a legitimate effort to do DNA testing of the envelopes and stamps. I have been personal friends with the New Jersey Attorney General for several years through politics and through other avenues, and thought it would be a pretty simple phone call for me to ask him to allow some DNA testing of the stamps and envelopes. And that conversation went something like this. Kurt, nobody cares about this. It's a 90-year-old case. And my response back was, that's great, Matt. If nobody cares about this, then why do you care about it? Like, what difference does it make? I'm having a hard time understanding.
Mhm.
If you don't want, if nobody cares about this, then why would you care if anybody actually did forensic analysis of this stuff? Um, Let me put you in touch with my chief of staff. So then I spoke with his chief of staff several times, and I kept getting the runaround with no definitive answer as to why the answer was no. It would have been helpful, I think, to actually hear the reason is no because dot dot dot. I didn't hear that. I just kept hearing no. So I was left with no other option but to pursue litigation. And I was working closely with a director named Chuck Braverman, a producer named Wayne McDaniel, and Margaret Sudaker, who you probably know and who spent 10 years of her life volunteering in the museum. No, yeah,
I never met her, but I know,
okay.
yes. By the way, did you know Mike Holefield when he went through this process?
I did
He did
not
it
know.
before you, because you're talking 2008.
Yep.
This was like 2006 or 5 or something.
Okay.
Mike Holefield. And how many attorney generals? They've changed them a lot,
They
haven't?
do.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they do. They get appointed by the governor.
Oh,
I have friends and a network with the Democratic Party of the state of New Jersey, and had full expectations that this would be as simple as
right.
let me share a couple war stories about jumping out of airplanes and sleeping in sand in Iraq and Africa, and these guys will take care of me. And I was very naive, and it didn't happen that way. But yes, that was definitely predated me for sure. What happened with that one?
Nothing, because they gave him an answer that they're not giving you. You're saying all they say to you is no, 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 without an explanation. Mike Holyfield explained to me that morning when he couldn't get on the plane to go there to pick up the envelopes. He told me the attorney general wouldn't sign a paper allowing him to do it based on the mandate of the law. When Brendan Byrne created this archive for the public,
Hmm.
they were designated as historical documents. And that's when I
Hmm.
said to Mike right then and there on the phone, I said, but they just handed over all the stuff to the Lindberghs based on their lawyer's demand. They had a legal document. They came right into the archive. Mark Falzini must have told you what happened, because he called me up. He said, I almost cried when I had to pack up the sleeping suit. I mean, these are artifacts on which the entire case turned. The
Hmm.
bones, the hair, the stuff that was on exhibit in that showcase. And here was the museum, the state of New Jersey, handed it all over to the Lindberghs based on their claim that it belonged to
Yep,
them. And where was the historical document principle? It was out the window. They didn't
that's
even
right.
argue that.
Yeah, and what you're referencing is Executive Order 110, signed on October 9th, 1981 by Governor Byrne, and that's particularly relevant to my lawsuit. That week is the same exact week that Anna Hauptman sued the state of New Jersey for wrongful death of her husband, Bruno Richard Hauptman. So 45 years after he was executed, she pursued a wrongful death lawsuit and was fully expected, was hoping to get several millions of dollars from the state of New Jersey. Um, in response to this litigation and the hearing that the litigation was being pursued, Governor Byrne said, "Great, we're not hiding anything. Members of the public, you have fair access to copy, a full and complete inspection and full and complete examination of all of these records." That language mirrors the exact wording of the New Jersey Open Public Record Law, which has been in the book since 1963. There's been multiple iterations to change the Open Public Records Act, which is short for OPRA. OPRA is the acronym for Open Public Records Act. Um, but the entire purpose of it is government transparency. And in New Jersey's entire criminal law history, this is the only case in which a governor opened the entire case file up to the public so that the public can copy, examine, and inspect those documents
Oh,
and the archives, both the tangible physical evidence, i.e., the ladder and other things which you can hold, or in the past you could hold it, and the documents of over 225,000 documents. When you apply those words, inspect and examine documents and evidence, to language in 2025, they mean significantly different things than they meant to the general public in 1981.
what?
Because so there was no forensic DNA
Right,
capabilities the way
right,
that we know it today
right,
in 1981. So
right,
when he said the members of the public can examine all of these things, um, if forensic DNA existed in 1981, I'm certain that the governor would have allowed testing of that when he signed the executive order, because the entire purpose of his executive order was, we're not hiding anything.
right,
New Jersey convicted and executed the right person, and we're not hiding anything.
right.
And that was why he signed it. What's really puzzling to me is how courts have still not interpreted this one case, and the terms inspect and examine, two modern terms, inspect and examine, and apply it to the context of what the governor was saying with his executive order. Um, so back to my story, of speaking to the chief of staff and then linking up with Wayne McDaniel, Chuck Braverman, and Margaret Sudaker. I was left with no choice in the summer of 2022 but to pursue litigation. And so I spent the better part of about 3 or 4 weeks drafting up a verified complaint. Um, now, mind you, my entire legal experience, which I haven't shared yet, is on the federal side. I'm not a state, while I'm licensed to practice law in the states of New York and New Jersey, I don't practice law in the state of New Jersey. I don't practice law in the state of New York. I've been an Army JAG attorney and a federal prosecutor for the Department of Justice. And then I've worked in-house into different pharmaceutical companies. Um, I'm still a JAG attorney. I've been with the United States Army JAG Corps, and this is now my 23rd year with the Army. Of course, everything I'm saying is on my own behalf and not on the behalf of any organization that I'm affiliated with. But it was my first case ever filing by myself in the state of New Jersey. And yes, I have friends that assisted me on the legal side, but I made some procedural errors in the summer and early fall of 2022. And when I filed that lawsuit, linking the Open Public Records Act to Executive Order 110, leading to the only logical conclusion that the purpose of Executive Order 110 was to allow full and complete examination of all documents here, including DNA forensic analysis. In modern terms today, that we view that as, I made procedural mistakes. I had an argument in January of 2023, which, despite asking the Superior Court of New Jersey for witnesses, I was denied an opportunity to have any witnesses. Um, the hearing itself lasted about 45 minutes, and the order in favor of the state of New Jersey, 16-page full order, was issued to me that same day.
Hmm.
So I don't think that justice happened on my hearing on January 5th, 2023. And I was determined to appeal that decision for several different procedural errors that the court made. I did appeal it, and I had an appellate hearing on October 29th, 2024. So almost 2 full years later, that's how slow the appellate process took.
Hmm.
And the court decided to rule on the procedural errors and not really the merits of my argument. And so now this new effort that we're doing does not have procedural errors. And our new argument, which will be filed exactly 1 week from today on April 25th, which is why I'm going to encourage people listening to this multiple times to please sign the petition and send me an email back confirming where they live and their address. Will be filed on April 25th. It will not have procedural issues, and the Superior Court of the state of New Jersey will be forced to make a decision on the merits of the argument connecting both the purpose and intent of the Open Public Records Act with the purpose and intent of Executive Order 110.
Where can people sign this petition? They can go to www.lindberghkidnappinghoax.com. And if they're watching this video, there'll be a link at the end of this. Where else can they sign it?
Yeah, great. They could also email me directly. My name appears right there. I know it's a very challenging email address, but it's kurt.perhach@gmail.com. So if you send me an email, I will make sure that you are a part of this historic case, which I do believe we are going to win. And, whether you believe Hauptmann is innocent, guilty, whether you believe Lindbergh was involved, whether you believe Violet Sharp was involved, here's what I know. In that entire museum of 225,000 pieces of paper, very few pieces of paper have any tangible, significant, relevant evidence today. And the ones that do have tangible, relevant historical significance today include the stamps, the ransom envelopes sent by the kidnapper or kidnappers, because saliva DNA lasts a very, very long time. And there is still very clearly adhesive attached to the envelopes, which were opened with letter openers,
Mhm.
and there are still 10 stamps that are still stuck to the piece of paper. Now, as you said in your last podcast, it's entirely possible that somebody dabbed water and sealed paper and sealed stamps. Great. If that's the case, what would the state of New Jersey be opposed to testing that for?
Right.
Um, I think it's less likely that somebody would have done that and had the foresight to think about that in 1932. And I think more likely than not, somebody licked those documents with their tongue. Um, there were 15 total ransom envelopes sent as part of this case. 13 of those ransom envelopes are in the archives in the State Police Museum in New Jersey. It's believed that ransom envelope number 4 was given by Lindbergh to a friend of his, and it is widely believed that ransom envelope number 15, which was the one, the Bodnelli envelope, where the frantic father opened it up quickly and tossed the envelope to the side to see what was inside of that envelope. So the state only has 13 of the 15 envelopes. And of those 13 envelopes that they have in their possession, 10 of them have stamps on them. So there are 23 opportunities to obtain DNA from those envelopes. I don't understand why this is a challenge for the state of New Jersey. I don't understand the thought process. The more time has progressed, and now I've been at this for many, many years at this point, I'm left with it's sort of a catch-22 for the state of New Jersey. On the one hand, if Hauptmann's DNA is on these stamps and envelopes, that's going to tell people who studied the case, great, we already knew that he was one of the conspirators of it, and he's the one who wrote the notes. That doesn't mean he was the lone kidnapper.
Right.
So that does nothing for the state of New Jersey if Hauptmann's DNA is on these documents. What really I think is what they're scared of is what we all think they're scared of. What if Hauptmann's DNA is not on these stamps and envelopes? Now, I've struggled with that conversation in my head for a very long time now. Why would a police commissioner in 2025, a lieutenant in the New Jersey State Police, a corporal in the Lieutenant State Police, really care about whose DNA is on these? Anyone with any type of education at all understands police corruption existed in the 1930s. Police beat suspects in the 1930s. Police starved suspects in the 1930s. Police forced suspects to write handwriting samples over and over and over again until letters looked like the way they wanted them to look. What difference does it make in modern times for anybody in the state government of New Jersey? That's what I struggle with. That's what inspires me and motivates me to fight harder. And when I physically showed up on Friday, St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 2023, to take pictures of the backs of every single envelope that I wanted to test, 12 armed guards from the New Jersey State Police Department were there in my presence, 4 on each corner of the table.
What?
Yes, multiple ones staring at me. All they did was fire me up more, motivate me more, and I was speaking very loudly. All you guys are doing right now is making me not ever want to stop this fight because you're trying
You
to
just,
make me.
uh,
Sorry.
they knew you were coming because you asked. Mark wasn't there. He had retired.
Mark had already retired. I had already filed my lawsuit, and I asked the
Oh,
attorney general, who had argued against me. One of the attorney general, a lawyer from the attorney general's office, who had argued against me. If I can go there and take photos of the backs of the envelopes and the stamps that I want to do, that I want to use on the appeal, and he scheduled the time for me because at that point in time, the new archivist, Mark's replacement, named Greg Ferrara, was still allowing people to go back there into the archives, and they scheduled a time for me at 2 p.m., knowing full well that the museum closed at 3 p.m., so that I had a finite, limited amount of time in order to go in there and take pictures. I took lots of pictures, and they were intentionally trying to intimidate me. Now, really, really interesting, a whole year before, in March of 2022, they had a water leak in their ceiling. I don't know if your listeners or if you know this. To stop the water leak from hitting the papers, protecting these 225,000 pieces of papers and precious historical documents that they argue you can't do testing because these are precious historical documents. The state police took a garbage can and a garbage bag inside of the garbage can directly over the water leak to let the water drip into the garbage can. The ceiling,
Kurt, wait.
yep,
I
yep,
just received a note that it's going to end in 10 minutes. That was a
okay,
minute or two ago. Can
great.
we end this and start it again, part two?
Sounds good.
Do you
Talking
have
with
the
you.
time to do
I
part
do.
two in
I
it?
do.
So I'm going to end this and it'll take a few minutes and we'll come back. And this is too important to leave.
Sounds
I,
good.
I know what you're talking about with the leak in the ceiling, but people need to hear this. So let's stop recording. Oh, recording.
All right.